Hey folks, Mark Johnson, Tech Snobs. Today I'm going to give you a full demo on a presentation I did back in October of last year on implementing Android for work. Big shout out goes to Better Cloud for having me on there to do this demo. Had a lot of fun doing it. The cool thing about this is just yesterday, Google announced that starting June 5th, if you're using Android for work, well actually if you're using G Suite as your EMM provider for your G Suite domain, the option to use Android for work is going to be the default option. So when you take a look at this on the screen here, you can see all those icons that basically have a little briefcase by them. That basically just signifies my work data and my personal data is separate from company data. So I do a whole demo, I do a Q&A on this whole thing. We also provide services on how to get that set up. So be sure to check out the video, and contact information is below. Thanks for watching. Take care.
My name is Scott Solomon. We are really excited for the last session of day one of Cloud IT Live. This is the first ever session that we've had on Android for Work, so we're especially excited. Our speaker today also spoke at our last Cloud IT Live event, but this time he's the star of the show. He gets his own session, so we're really excited to have him back. He's going to be doing some demonstrations as well, which we're really excited for. So, but before we get started, just a few announcements. If you would like to ask questions during this session, join the Better Cloud Slack community. You can go to bettercloud.com/slack-community. That's bettercloud.com/slack-community. The community is totally free to join, and it's what we've been using for the entire event, but there's also a bunch of other channels to discuss really any cloud IT related topic. Also, we're excited to announce here at Better Cloud our limited preview of our new unified SaaS management platform. If you are interested in learning more about the limited preview and getting access to that, please email preview@bettercloud.com. So preview@bettercloud.com. And finally, to get to today's session, while we're all here, we're excited to have Mark Johnson from the state of Maryland here today. Outside of being the apps administrator at the state of Maryland, Mark runs his own company called Tech Snobs. He's got his own YouTube channel. I've known Mark since the last Cloud IT Live, and he's been great to work with and is really passionate about Android for Work in particular. So with that, I'll pass things off to you, Mark, and we can get going.
Sounds good. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you all having me again, and really excited to go through this demo of Android for Work. So main thing, we're just going to start off how you can benefit by implementing Android for Work. So I've got a quick few slides to go through. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through a little quick poll. And basically this poll is, do you believe your company data on employees' devices is at risk? So that's just one of those things where, you know, I think it is for a lot of companies, and they're just unaware of it. So, you know, that's one thing to, you know, really think about when you allow folks to bring their own device. You know, is that data leaving when they are leaving? So that's just one thing I'd highly suggest you keep in mind. So let's keep on going here. All right. So the first slide here, we're talking about the benefits of Android for Work.
Hey, Mark, sorry to interrupt. Do you want to go ahead and share your screen one more time? It looks like we're stuck on the main slide.
Gotcha, no problem. Let me go back. How's that go?
Looks good. And for those wondering the results of that poll, 83% believe that their company data is at risk on employee devices. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting, Scott. And one of the benefits of using Android for Work is, data security. And with that being said, your work and personal data are separated. And using a real life scenario here, we have, an executive with the state that actually he was using his own personal device, but he didn't like the commingling of the data. He had all of his email coming into one Gmail app on his phone. And so his personal and his work data was there, and it could get really confusing when, people are sending you stuff, which email account you're responding from, whether it's your personal or your work. Things can get real mixed up very fast. So that's one of the things that Android for Work addresses. The second thing, work and personal Play Store apps are separated. And this is a big feature, because you can now, with Android for Work, allow users to just use their personal account with their personal Play Store, and then the Work Play Store, you can whitelist apps and things that they only can use apps with their work account that you've whitelisted. And another scenario with this same thing is if somebody wants to come in and play Pokemon Go and share their location data and do all this other stuff, they can't do it with their work account, but they can do it with their personal account, but they just wouldn't be allowed to install the app at all. Last thing, device security. One of the perks with this is company-owned and BYOD devices have separate policies. So the great thing about it is, like, if you have a company-owned device that you're deploying out to your users, you can actually lock those down a lot more so than the BYOD ones, and they have different. You can have completely different policies. So if you give somebody an Android device, you get a whole lot more policies than you would with BYOD. But BYOD, you can do some very cool things where you could prevent users from copying work data over into the personal space. So that's another big benefit. So jumping right into it, Android for Work requirements. In order to set up Android for Work on your device, your organization must sign up for Android for Work and choose an enterprise mobility management provider, EMM provider. Now, the good thing about Android for Work is you can use it with Mobile Iron, you can use it with AirWatch, you can use it with several EMM providers out there, and it can tie into their system as well. Also, you can use it with Google if you don't have a bigger MDM product that you're currently using. Another requirement is devices have to have Android 5.0 Lollipop and later that support the work profile, which is key. This is what allows you to do everything in Android for Work. So if they don't have that version of Android with the work profile support, they're not going to be able to take advantage of this. And then the last requirement is if Google is your EMM provider, you just have to install the G Suite Device Policy app from the App Store. And once you have that app installed, you pretty much got everything you need to go. So on this slide here, and I'm going to actually show you this during the live demo, is using your native apps. Now, the Google Play Store allows you to customize what apps are available to your user when they're using their work email account. Also, you can use the native apps, which are identified with a briefcase. And you'll see that on the right-hand side, these apps have a briefcase that show you that they're the work apps, and then your regular apps that are your personal ones won't have the briefcase. The perk about this is that with a lot of other tools out here, MDM solutions and things, that they're really nice, but they often make you use another mail app or another contacts app or something like that. Benefit of Android for Work is you can still use those same Gmail apps, Google Calendar, and so forth as you always did in the past. So that's the main perk. And then on this last slide here, we have the BYOD versus company-owned policies. Now, put this together, and this, just so you can get an idea that Android for Work is really good in a BYOD environment and a company-owned environment for Android devices. And then, like I was talking about earlier, you can set policies to prevent sharing of data between the work and personal profiles. And then one of the main things that we get all the time is when people ask, hey, if I bring my device in, are you going to have the ability to wipe my whole device, or can you just wipe off my work data? And prior to Android for Work, you only could wipe the entire device. Now with Android for Work, you can wipe out just the work profile, and it will leave the personal data intact. company owned, you have total control of the device. I mean, you can do things like control their Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all kinds of things. And then you also can ensure that you'll be able to use the device again after it's wiped. And another real world scenario with that is we've had customers, in agencies buy phones. Sometimes they've even given them to their end user first. The challenge is sometimes their end user will put their personal Gmail account on there. And what happens is if you wipe that device by using, putting a passcode in wrong 10 times or doing a remote wipe, that device is, if it's a newer Android device, it's going to require the person who originally signed into the phone with that initial account to sign back in. It's very similar to the iOS activation lock. And so when you have a company-owned device, you can prevent people from wiping the phone, you can prevent people from adding random accounts. So that's something else to keep in mind, when you considering using Android for work, some of these other perks. So let's go ahead now. At this point, I'm going to pull up a demo. Give me a moment. Okay, so what we're going to do here, I'm showing you, this is using the Samsung S7 Active. And the first thing I want to show you is in Gmail, I have two test accounts in here. I have a Mark Test 5 and I have a Mark Test. Now, the Mark Test 5 is just going to be the regular personal account I'm using. And then the Mark Test is going to be the account I'm going to use for Android for work. Now, as you know, like I was talking about before, this typically people set up their devices, they add them into one Gmail client, and it adds all the email inboxes all together. So you really don't know unless you click on the message who it's intended for. So perfect example, that one went to Mark Test 5, and if I click on the one underneath it, that one went to Mark Test. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a work profile. So we're going to go into the device policy. And this is the great thing about this is it's going to allow you to opt in. And I'm going to show you that as well. Work profile. We're going to hit create. Just have to agree to a couple things. And while it's setting up the work profile, actually, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about some of the policies that could be done. This real quick. So with the work profile, of course, you have the opt-in feature, and then you have some features with the apps and data sharing. I'm going to show you that once this is finished. Okay, so I wanted to pull this up, and under the work profile setting in your admin console, all these settings down here, apps and data sharing, company owned, company owned, company owned, as you see those top three, those are when you want to set up the device as a device owner option. When you first set up the device, that's an option you have. The cool thing is that when you're using Android for work, you have features that work with both the device owner and you have features that work with the work profile / BYOD. So as I scroll down to the bottom, I give an example. I can prevent people from sharing their work profile to personal space only if they use a work profile. I can allow people to copy and paste stuff between work profile and personal space. So if I'm using a device owner option, if that's owned by the company or the state or whoever it may be, these two features don't work on that because you already own it and you have complete control of it anyhow. So that's one of the main perks with that. So with that being said, I'm going to jump back to the phone. Show you what happened. So now, as you can see, the profile's been created. At the top of the screen, you see a work folder, and you actually now you see some apps already starting to show up. I'm going to also go into the app drawer here, and you'll see there's a Gmail, there's the Play Store, various apps. You can actually push certain apps that you want to have go to the phone automatically, which is the main perk. By going to Gmail, it's going to go back in. There's my mark test. And then just like that, you have all of my email from my mark test is put into this mailbox. As you can see now, there's just one account. And then if I go back to a regular Gmail, you're going to see my mark test 5 there. So that's the main thing right there. You have your own folders, everything's separated. And one of the next things I'm going to show you is the Play Store. So when you go into the Play Store, the Work Play Store, as you can see, it's vastly different from well, in a sense, from what you see when you first open it up than what you would normally see on the normal Play Store. And you only have apps to the work apps, anything we've approved or whitelisted. And as you see right now, Google Calendar is auto-installing. And what we've done is we've actually set it up to automatically install as soon as the work profile is created. So you can do that with several apps on there. And the great thing about it is, like, even if I wanted to go in here and I search for something like a Pokemon, it's not even going to show up. I can search, and there's going to be no results found. Whereas if I went back and I went to my normal Play Store and I typed in Pokemon, it's going to show up right there at the bottom. So everything's completely separate. You have a totally separate app store. You have a totally separate email, all your work stuff separated. And then as you also notice, it continually adds them to the work folder, which is a great feature. Keeps things very separated. So with that being said, I'm also going to show you how you can see this in the admin console. So what we're going to do, we're going to go under App Management, and then we're going to look at Manage Applications for Android Devices. Manage these. And as you can see, these are all the applications that we've set up to whitelist. And then if you remember, when I had Google Calendar automatically installed, we have that feature set up to automatically install it, once you've added the work profile. I'll even go in there and show you a little bit more. Yeah, automatically installed. You can set it up where users can't uninstall it. You can choose if they can add widgets or not, which is awesome. And then another thing, if you decided you ever wanted to get rid of an app, like if I wanted to get rid of Google Docs, I can just go in here and hit remove, and then it would be gone. And then if I wanted to add an application, this is where it's a little tricky. They just make you do a little bit of extra work here, but you have to go into the Work Play Store itself. Let's say I find any random app like this Screen Meet. If I click on that, I'd have to approve it. And then once it's been approved here, I would just have to go in and add it back under the whitelist. And I'm going to hit automatically install. I'm going to hit whitelist. And then I'm going to switch back to my phone. And then here shortly, you'll see that app come down. What sometimes you'll have to keep in mind too with the app's policy, it does sync over a certain amount of times. I think that every few minutes it will actually sync up. And then once it does that, that determines when applications will come in. So let's see if that popped in yet. So actually it did not, but you get the drift. Ideally, it will just pop one in here it's just asking me to re-authenticate. One of the best features, though, I really want to show you, I'm going to jump back into Android for Work in the admin console real quick, is Device management. Under Android setting, there's some more features in here we could talk about. So under users and accounts, you can actually control if users can add accounts or not. And this is where the company owned comes in, which is the device owner option. You also have the ability to control if they can do Google accounts, if they can add additional ones on there. Another thing is with the networks, if it's company owned, now these last two are just company owned only, you can control all these things: Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, VPN, tethering, all that good stuff. And then under device features, you have some more things here with, you can control the speaker, the microphone, if they can factory reset it, which is really nice. And at that point, last thing I want to show you is I'm going to do a remote wipe, and I'm going to show you how that works. So I'm going to go to the home page, and then I'm going to just wipe my work profile off. And then in a moment, once that kicks through, as you just saw, it just disappeared right at the top of the screen. Work profile's gone. Pull down, you'll see work profiles deleted. All the other data is still there. By going to Gmail, you'll see Mark Test 5 is still there. And if I wanted to re-add another account, I could always do so. So that pretty much wraps up the demo, as far as Android for Work. I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to Scott.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. If you want to go ahead and share your screen in full screen mode right there. One question that came in, or more a statement, but I think there is a question here. Todd Thompson says, my staff freaked when I forced Google device policy enforcement for mobile on our domain, but no one is required to use their personal device. So if they want to do so for their convenience, the trade-off is device policy. I'm just wondering, do you guys have is it an opt-in policy that you guys have, or are they required to, bring their own device, or what's the situation for you, and I guess how do you kind of handle those concerns?
That's a great question. In that situation, it usually it's always an opt-in. I mean, in a lot of cases, we have agencies that do not provide devices for their employees. So if they want their email or work data on their personal device, it's pretty much that, hey, this is what the policy is. We are in an interesting spot where we're in a consolidation where we're trying to get everybody up to speed on the same type of policy. But across the board, yeah, we kind of always hit on the main points, like, hey, you need to have a 6-character passcode. You got to have device encryption. So those are the things that immediately jump out. And for some folks, it can have a major impact on their normal workflow, just due to the fact that encryption can slow a device down a little bit, or device also with encryption, sometimes it will require you to put in a password twice if you reboot the phone. So, and then the last thing I'll say is we've also had some folks that's gone as far as to have their users sign waivers, to add their device to the device policy.
Okay, another one that just came in from Colin McCarthy, who is just on a panel. What's your experience of Android apps on Chrome OS? Is there anything special to know regarding Android apps on Chromebooks using G Suite accounts?
That's a good question. I actually haven't messed a lot around with the new Android apps on Chrome OS. I know there's a couple Chromebooks out there. I know there's like an Acer, I think, Flip that supports the touch screen, and you can use Android apps, right on Chrome OS. But I hope to have one of those in the, with the, definitely before the end of the year, to try it out. But yeah, I haven't. I've heard some mixed things just because of the, the screen and the resolution, and depending on how the app was designed. But I haven't played with it too much.
Follow up. Do you think this will change Chrome OS adoption? I'm guessing by this, Colin means Android for work.
Yeah, that I think it could definitely help. I've seen a lot of. It's funny, we talked about Android for work today, but then there's another whole thing in the admin console about Chrome management in general, and there's even some things in Chrome management where you can control Android Chrome settings, which is in beta right now. So I think it definitely can. I mean, as far as which way it's going to go, I think Chrome OS we're starting to use. It's kind of up in the air. It's some folks are really entrenched into the Windows world, so it's going to be interesting.
Okay, a question from the GoToWebinar panel. How about enforcing a passkey to unlock a BYOD device? Can we effectively force a user to use a passkey on their own device?
Yes, and that's one of the main things that we're excited about doing. When we do this, is that a lot of folks, you look at these stats out here, it's probably close to 30% of folks that still don't even put a passcode on their device, much less anything more than 4 characters. So that's like one of the main policies we always enforce is a 6-digit passcode, and we also can enforce encryption on a personal device as well. We can pretty much enforce anything on a personal device, but we do, we are lenient in a sense where we're like, hey, these are the 2 main things you got to have, and then some of these other things is kind of like, if you want to save some, data to your phone, we may move them into another OU with more policies on it.
Is there a way the admins can make the installation of the Google G Suite policy app mandatory?
The challenge we've run into, I will say, is for instances, if you have a company or agency or business that sends devices right to their user, that's where the challenge comes in, because they get it out of the box from AT&T, Verizon. It won't have things set up unless you have some agreement with that carrier to pre-install that on there, which some do offer that service. But what we've tried, that we've actually got some more mobile device technicians on the staff, and they've been able to. We'll have the devices go to them first, and if it's company owned, I mean they've done everything. I mean, they've made it a device owner. It's already joined. So it's pretty much good to go when we hand it to them.
Great. And then another one that came in, will Android for work with a Google for Education domain?
Excellent question. I don't know the answer to that, honestly. I want to say yes. I haven't we have some education. We have an agency that deals a lot in education, but we don't have a Google Apps education account. So I really can't say. I really can't answer that one. I have to look that up.
If there's anybody in education that uses Android for work in the community, just let us know and we'll provide the answer. Let's see. Personally, for you, what is your favorite thing about Android for work? Maybe something that that you think is kind of an underutilized feature, or something that people may not be aware of.
Great question. For me, I think that the main thing for Android for work is going to go back to security thing for me. I'm real big on who data is shared with, so it's a combination, and it's maybe not. Some may know about it. I did demo it earlier, and that's really the workplace store. And the main reason is because it's just, prior to Android for work, if you put your business account on the phone and you just downloaded a random app from the Play Store and prior to Android 6.0, you couldn't even choose what type of information you shared with the third party. It's just gone. I mean, you could, some of these APIs and things that open your Google account up. Some people, a lot of folks aren't really aware of that when they just hit accept. So I think, I mean, personally for me, it's that. And I will say this: I do know that there's some new features coming in with Android Nougat. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I was on their webpage the other day, and they've got some new features coming with that. And they just keep evolving. I think if anything about Android for Work is just that every time I look, there seems to be a new policy or something new that you could turn on or cut off, so that's always exciting.
How do you manage user requests for apps to be approved on Android for Work? Do you have kind of a set process of approval?
Great question. What we do with that, we work with our security team, and we'll ask them, we'll say, hey, what do you think about this? Granted, a lot of times sometimes they may come back to us and say, well, what do we think about it? And that's usually our process. We have a security team there that actually will try to vet some of this stuff out. And then sometimes we'll just do our own little, common sense thing. We may look at it and say, hey, if this app is, depending on what it is and how reputable the company is, we may say, hey, if they want access to my location data and all my contacts and all my phone history, maybe we'll look at some alternatives before we just turn it on.
Question from Rob Silva: could we inadvertently lock a user from their own advice? For example, when a student accepts an Android policy when authenticating their account on a parent's device.
That's actually a great question. That one thing I didn't demo, and there was a feature in there where we actually have a device approval, and this is just using the basic Google Apps admin console. We have ours set up in a way where, hey, I got my device today, I'm trying to set it up, right? As soon as I attempt to add my account, an email gets sent off to a service desk, and it's going to say, hey, this person's trying to set up their phone, it's pending approval, which requires myself or some other admin to go in there and actually approve that device. So the good thing about it, if somebody makes a mistake, it can and tries to add a device, or they kind of change their mind, we can just flat out ignore the approval. Sometimes we do that. Other times, if they've gone through the full process and it got accidentally approved, we could still, there's ways you can remove the profile off the device and remove the account and company data without, requiring a wipe of the device. And I'll bring that last part up very respectfully as far as the wipe goes, because there are some Android devices out there. In the past, HTC was very, very famous for, once you encrypted it and once you added a work account, the only way you could turn encryption off was if you wiped the device. So that was, in the past. I think the HTC 10 still may do that, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Admins love reports. So what reports on apps installed usage can you get from Android for Work, if any?
That's a great question as well. So we just went to Apps Unlimited not too long ago, and they released a whole new suite of applications and reports. So, for instance, like now I can see when people, there's suspicious activity, like if they change a bootloader or something on a device, you'll get a prompt for that. There's ways that you could see if people are upgrading to iOS 10 or Android, whatever version. So it's way better. I mean, just within the past month and a half, it's like a complete 180 than what it was about 6 months ago. Before, we could see stuff like device ID. We can see we can even see apps that people have approved on their phone, like we have app auditing capabilities and things. But now you can export that stuff up into Drive and so forth, and it's a lot, it's a lot more useful. Before, it was kind of like you'd have to click on a user, open them up, and kind of do some, a lot more clicks than you do now.
Okay. What do you do with devices that are with older versions of Android, such as 4.4, which seems to be on many devices?
That's a great point too. So ironically, in those cases, you really can't do but so much. But we were actually having our folks upgrade them. But ironically, I was just reading this article yesterday about Google's roadmap, and they're actually going to be coming out with something for devices under Android 5.0. I want to say, I think it's supposed to be late third quarter. But yeah, if any of you have access to the Google, the Connect site, Connect for Work, I think was probably Cloud Connect for Work now. Check that out. But yeah, they are working on something for devices under 5.0.
This question comes from Sean. On a company device with a company policy, all of the native apps that are pre-installed on the device, are they redundant?
Great question. Actually, they're not. So what we do set up now, and I didn't show this earlier, is that if you have a company device, when you first power it on and you sign into your company's email, you'll get an option that says, "Hey, set this device, set it as device owner." You know, that company. And then once you do that, if I turned off hypothetically, let's say Google Calendar, you know, or whatever the other native app that may come, let's say it's a Samsung, you won't have that app on the phone. It actually removes it during the setup process. And then so every app on that phone from that point on has to be approved for you to use it. So you can't, it was no duplicate apps at all.
Let's see here. What about the actual rollout of this? How did you guys handle that at the state of Maryland? And especially if you're rolling out, Android for Work to, a lot of users at once, what was your process? And could you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, so one of the things what we do, we initially, and we're still in the process of doing, we start off with the opt-in, and that's the thing where, okay, you can opt into it now, go for it. The next thing we do is when we started enforcing it more, we would work with these agencies individually. It took a lot of communication. We set up some documentation. We'll set up some videos. But basically, for those who we've enforced it on, they have no option but to use it. And we just basically, it just took a lot of communication. So I think the best thing I would say would be start off with an opt-in. And in that stage, just get a lot of information as far as what devices they have. You could run reports in the admin console, you could find out prior if they have devices that support the work profile or not, which is great. And then that way you kind of know what you're dealing with.
What about actually crafting like a BYOD kind of contract or policy that either your reader or your users get to see, or management, or maybe even legal? Did you guys come up with a BYOD policy, and if so, how did you even get started with that? Because I'm sure it's could be pretty complex.
Yeah, that's a great question too. We have worked with since the state is in the process of kind of doing some consolidation, I will say some agencies already had that in place. They had a BYOD prior. But in our main consolidation, we're still in the process of kind of doing just that, like getting a lot of things written down in paper, in policy documents. And as things have changed so fast, that we've even also looked at things, other EMM providers that are bigger, that may help us roll this out without, physically having to touch a lot of devices, or it just, there's different tools out there, Mobile Iron, AirWatch. So we've looked at some of those tools as well. But the main thing, we've definitely gotten security involved. We've definitely, we've got an internal Google site that we set up that we would explain to people. But once again, it's really just a lot of it is communication. And with the states, and you're dealing with so many agencies with different amounts of users and budgets and things like that, that's where the main challenge comes in.
And with BYOD, I'm sure, unless it's prohibited in your policy, that people bring in iOS devices. How are you guys handling that?
It's a great question. iOS devices, we actually have something similar. There's a device policy app on iOS that you can use that does it. It's similar, but not. But with iOS, they have what's called a profile, and once you set it up with Apple. If someone opens up the Gmail app from the App Store, it basically it requires you to install its profile. And what that does is that it stops anybody from just adding their work account to their personal device, which up until just about 2 years ago, Google didn't have a way of preventing an end user from just installing Gmail on their iPhone or iPad and signing in with, and you would never even know it as an admin. So now you actually can prevent that. Let's say you are at a company, you say, hey, I don't want my iPhone or iPad users to add their work data to their iPhone or iPad. Well, now with doing this iOS management, you turn that on. They have to install a profile. You can, request that they get approved. Or, you can go in the admin console to approve them. And so that's basically the way we handle that as well. So, but it works great. I mean, we use that as well. We can prevent people from signing into rogue apps as well on iOS.
What is one of the most challenging aspects about Android for Work that you've been able to solve?
I would say probably the most challenging thing that we've been able to solve is really the I would say the communication part of it. Because I think when you bring up Android for Work and you talk about the stuff, it's the main thing is I think is when you start off somebody in this direction, you start off an agency or your end users down this path initially versus going backwards, it makes things a whole lot better. I've worked on this project a few years ago. Put it this way, Google evolved so much with their apps and policies and things. There was not a whole lot of extra, convincing to do or selling, so to speak. It is like, hey, this is our policy. This is what it is. You're going to be a lot safer, and they're good to go. It's not.
Let's see. Do you find the MDM capabilities in within Android for Work to be powerful enough for you guys? And yeah.
That's another good question. I think it has a lot of good capabilities now. I won't say it's completely there to where we would want it to be, only because we're so big that we have looked at some other EMM solutions like a mobile iron and so forth. So I think from that perspective, and there's some other goals that they have as far as maybe a person wrote in earlier and said, hey, what do you do about deploying this and so forth? Like if we got like an AT&T or Verizon to help install the stuff on the device before it got to the user. So with that being said, it's like those are some of the shortfalls I would say with the Android for Work or the Google MDM is just that some of these things require additional support. I think that's probably one of the most challenges. Just you need to have some folks that really understand it well to be able to support it.
Has support been a challenge for this? Like, have you received kind of a lot of support tickets regarding Android for Work, or has it been relatively smooth in your experience?
Yeah, with Android for Work is actually been smooth as far as getting it on there. Now, mobile device support in general, that's always been a challenge. I mean, getting this Apple, I mean, I think honestly this is almost even easier than sometimes explaining how to add somebody's account, because they can clearly see, okay, this is work, this is personal. It's the other stuff. It's how do I do this and how do I do that, and I'm trying to that those are just stuff that's operating system specific, or I got a Samsung S5 and this one's got a S7, and all those kind of things. So that's where the confusion can lie in the support nightmare. Actually, and back to that, I would highly suggest folks, if they're going down this route and you're buying the phone for the user, just get everybody the same phone or two. Maybe don't go more than 2 or 3 different phones, because it gets really confusing.
What is your user feedback for using Android for Work? Do you have have you had a positive experience?
Absolutely, yeah. Our executives really love it, and we have a lot of other users really love the other part of Android for Work, which is the company owned. And I have one person. I mean, they didn't. I guess they were more concerned, like, hey, I can't. Where's my Pandora or something? Or I was trying to get Pandora, but It's been positive, but I will say those, once again, if they're coming into the environment with Android for Work already in play, or if you're starting to bring on new folks and you set up a new OU and you turn it on and everybody new coming into the company automatically is going to get it and they're going to be either company owned or they're going to be Android for Work BYOD. I think that's the way to go personally. And then, go back to those who maybe were set up initially, but I think it's been positive. I mean, we've had a lot of people love it. We've had people request it more. The one of the downfalls was initially and has grown considerably. So it's been great.
Did you have an attorney review your tech policy?
They're actually still doing that. Like I said, we're doing a big consolidation, so I'm sure some agencies did, but we've got over 60 some agencies total. So I know some did, but as far as like the specific, Department of Information Technology where I'm at, they're still in the process of doing that.
Great. All right. Well, it looks like we are out of time, but I just want to say thank you, Mark. That was great. I appreciate you walking us through the demo and taking the time to answer some of those questions. Just a few last minute things. We will be kicking off Cloud IT Live Day 2 tomorrow at 11 a.m. That'll be a session with Brandon Williams, who is the Director of Google Operations at the state of Colorado. If you heard him talk at the last Cloud IT Live, his session was really great. So I think he's definitely gonna come back with another great session. So that session is called "How to Establish Realistic Standards and Policies and Calculate Cost Avoidance." And again, it's tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So we hope to see everybody back. And in the meantime, if you want to go in and join the Better Cloud or Better IT Slack community, you can do that at bettercloud.com/Slack-community. All right, everyone. Well, thank you, Mark, and I appreciate everybody attending.
I appreciate it. Thanks again, Scott. Thanks for having me.